Hello, my name is Judy Zorn. I'm the Executive Director of the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. Welcome to Tuesday Talks and to our guest, Dr. Vern Campbell. Vern.
Hi, Judy.
Welcome. We're so happy to have this opportunity to chat with Vern today. Many of you probably know him as Dr. Vern Campbell from the Campbell Eye Care here in Petoskey. He's been here as one of our favorite doctors for the last 20 years. But many of you also have seen and known him as the principal trumpet of the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. So today we're going to maybe focus a little bit more on that and his love of music and his love of the trumpet. Vern, I know you grew up in Big Rapids, right? And that's where you started your music training, and you have a delightful story about how you got into the cornet and the trumpet and the influence of your brother. Would you share some of that with us?
That's right. My brother, 7 years older than me, and he played the cornet. And I thought as a 5, 6, 7-year-old that he was possibly the best cornet player in the state, if not the country. I was very impressed with that. And naturally, I wanted to play the cornet. It was a long time before I was able to play the cornet. I was too young.
Your parents said no.
My parents said no. You know, you're too young, but they got me piano lessons, which is a wonderful introduction to music, is the piano. But my true desire was to play the cornet. The years passed, every year, Mom, when can I play the cornet? When I got into the 5th grade, by that time my brother was maybe a senior in high school. He'd gotten the trumpet by that time. And I'll never forget my mom bringing me into my older brother's room, which was off limits, of course. So I was on hallowed ground. She brought me to his closet, opened the closet door, handed me that old cornet case. And I took that cornet into my room. I put it on my bed. I still remember opening the latch, opening that lid and looking at that cornet. The lacquer was all gone, it had scratches on it. I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my life. The tears just came right down my cheek. I was so overjoyed with that cornet. And of course, even today, when I pick up the trumpet, I get a little bit, not quite like that, but I still get that joy in playing the instrument.
Isn't that amazing? And you played then all through high school. And you you did your undergrad work at Ferris, and you played there. Now, let's move back a minute. I think I recall you saying something about there were 3 bands in your high school.
Well, we had an excellent music program at Big Rapids High School, and I throw a shout out to Don Flickinger as our band director. It was excellent. And yes, we had 3 full concert bands at the time. The school was 900 kids, but we had 3 complete bands. And Don encouraged the kids to take private music instruction. We were close enough to Mount Pleasant that we could carpool over to Mount Pleasant and take trumpet lessons. And of course, they had a wonderful trumpet teacher there, Dennis Horton. And Dennis must have had the patience of Job. I mean, at one time, our top band, I think we had 7 kids. We carpooled over there, and Dennis would each one right after the other. 7 kids, $5 a lesson in high school.
$5 a lesson.
I don't know how he did it. It's a tribute to him. But he instilled a love of the instrument and of course music into us.
Right.
And when I got into college, I toyed with the idea of studying music in college. In fact, that was my initial path, but I realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be another Don Flickinger or Dennis Horton. I didn't have that ability. I love the trumpet. I love playing the trumpet. I love listening to music, but I couldn't see myself teaching someone to play the oboe or the viola. I couldn't.
As a band teacher.
As a band teacher.
Sure.
I just couldn't see myself being the teacher that I had before, and I didn't want to be a mediocre anything. My other option was to go after my dream job, which is principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony, which wasn't to open for another 35 years. So that's not practical.
Right, so professional performing musician or a teacher, and
neither one just seemed right. So, here's music. What's close to it? Medicine sounds good. It's not quite as difficult. I can do that. So, all the way through my undergraduate, I played in the college bands and very involved with that. In fact, I think I spent more time on my trumpet than my studies. But regardless, got into medical school, and of course with medicine and medical school, internship, residency, starting a practice, the trumpet, I couldn't balance them at that point in time, and so I had to put the instrument, in the closet for 20, 25 years.
Wow. Well, I'm sure there are many very grateful people that you have helped medically, but I know around 2000 you relocated up here in Petoskey, and things changed a little bit. You started your practice here, but then somewhere along the line you dusted off your trumpet again. Tell us about that.
Well, our son, we have a son, he got into the 6th grade, and maybe it was 5th grade, and he decided that he wanted to play the clarinet. And so we got him a clarinet. He brought it home with instructions from his band director that he was, not to play it until he was able to go over the instrument with him. And I remember my son opening that clarinet case and looking at that clarinet, and I still see him running his hand over that clarinet with that awe in his eyes. And at that point in time, I brought back some memories. I'm going to bring my trumpet out and see if I can get my lips back into it and see how things work. And so that's what I did. I got the instrument out and I started practicing, and everything came back after time, and I realized that I was not going to give it up again. I had the time to dedicate to it. Started studying at Bayview in the summer, and studied with Scott Thornburg. Scott was very encouraging, but I didn't play in any groups, and the only person who knew that I played the trumpet was our son and my wife, who had me in a studio on the far end of the house, by the way. That's another story.
Vern.
She's wonderful.
Go over there.
She put up with all that. So Scott encouraged me to play in a group, and backing up a little bit. I think we talked about this before, Judy. I heard the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra maybe in the early 2000s, and I thought at the time, well, that's cute. Some guys get together, they play and make music, and that's nice.
And that's exactly what it was back in 2000. Yeah. That was the very beginning stages and the start of the orchestra. And that's exactly right. It was people getting together to make music for their enjoyment and the enjoyment of the few people that came to listen.
Right. My sister and I went to a concert at Bayview maybe 10 years later, and oh my gosh, I couldn't believe the improvement in the group. I mean, it was a tribute to the conductors, the management, and the people in the group. I was so impressed, and I thought to myself, I would like to play in that group. And I mentioned that to Scott, and he was very encouraging. But how do I get in the group? Nobody but my wife knows I play the trumpet. But I did know, I know physicians, right? There happened to be a physician on the board of the orchestra. So I called that person and I said, Bill, I'm interested in playing in the orchestra. Who do I talk? Well, what do you play?
Yeah.
You know?
Wow, Vern, no, I don't think so.
Are you a beginner? What is
Yeah.
this? Well, he gave me the name of the orchestra manager, and I called the manager, and again, I said, my name is Vern Campbell. I play the trumpet. I'm interested in playing in the orchestra. There's a pause on the other end of the line.
A dead silence.
Like, okay, I know he's an ophthalmologist, but
Yeah, right.
is he a beginner? What is this? And the answer came back, well, we are not looking for a trumpet player right now. But I persisted. I said, well, I understand that, but I'd just like to do an audition.
Yeah, let me audition.
Because, if you ever need somebody can't play, somebody's sick, you need a third or fourth trumpet, I'm here and I might be able to fill that role.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I showed up to the audition. It was one person with a video machine, a computer, I think. Played a couple etudes, and the next day I got a call. We do need a trumpet player. And that's how it started about 8 years ago. And the rest is history.
That's amazing.
So.
The rest is history, as they say. Yeah, no question. I think our audience, Vern, would enjoy a little more of an insight about the trumpet and what does it mean to be a trumpet player in an orchestra? What do you do? I mean, I know you.
Well,
it sounds silly. I know you play the trumpet.
Yeah.
You play an instrument that everybody hears every time you make a sound. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, everybody hears, especially if we make a mistake, it kind of sticks out.
Kind of like percussion.
You hear that trumpet
Exactly.
player. Well, trumpet players, of course, we think we're the most important instrument in the orchestra.
Well, you are a brass
know.
player. Yes. Brass players tend to think that.
But the reality is that the violin is the queen of the orchestra, and trumpets very often play a supportive role. This is different than the wind band, where we're often the main voice. So it's important to know when we're there to support, when we're there for coloring, when we need to be heard. And that's the main challenge. Now, the orchestra, they're very good. The management's good. They let us know way in advance what we're going to play. So we know almost a year in advance what we're going to play. As soon as I learn what we're going to do, I make sure I have it in my collection of recordings. Oftentimes I do. We were going to do Beethoven's Ninth here. Well, that's in my collection. I know the piece quite well. But I listen to it many times over to hear the trumpets are playing, but how much do they need to be heard?
Right, all the nuances.
Is it the main voice, or is it something just there for coloring? So that's how I listen to those recordings. A violinist, for example, gets the part, and they'll get this book like this, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and there'll be very difficult passages. They'll be grinding their way to learn those difficult passages. Trumpet player gets maybe 4 pages, 3 or 4 pages. The parts are not that difficult, quite honestly. Maybe I shouldn't say this on tape. I struggle with the difficult. No, they're actually not that difficult. The difficulty is knowing how we fit in. And also, when we get the part, the first thing we do is look at the key, what key we're to play in. Trumpets very often are asked to transpose their parts. So Pat and I favor the C trumpet on many things. So we'll get, say, Beethoven's Ninth, we're talking about that. We'll get Beethoven's Ninth, it'll say trumpet in D. Well, if we play what's written, we'll be a whole step off. So we have to know what it's pitched to make sure we're comfortable with the transposition before that first rehearsal.
Right.
And we don't want to be
Right.
playing parts that are relatively easy for us, but playing entirely the wrong key. It doesn't.
Right.
It's not really good.
Well, these are things that, we just don't know. We see the row of brass players back there, trumpets and trombones and possibly tuba and all of that, and you can always hear when the brass section is playing, and adds, as you said, such a color and such a wonderful sound to the whole ensemble sound of the orchestra, and it's just so great to hear you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I understand that you have just recently retired from
That's correct,
your ophthalmology practice, and that has to be, well, it's still all very new for you.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Well, medicine was getting in the way of my trumpet career, so we had to make a decision there.
Yes.
So trumpet, this time it's gonna be the medicine that's gonna go. So yes, I'm looking forward to being more involved with primarily the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, but other groups and.
Well, you are playing. The orchestra has a brass quintet, and you play with Ed and a couple other guys, Pat, and in the quartet, and of course the quintet performs a lot on the Sunday series concerts, and I know our audience enjoys that so much. And now we, of course, have been dark for a while, as have many orchestras and many live performing organizations. So are you practicing at home quite a bit?
Well, I have been practicing actually more than what I have been, because I'm not going to the office. Now, when I went to the office, the first thing I did when I came home, and my wife would always joke about this, before I changed my clothes or anything, I'd go upstairs in my studio and start, do my warm up.
Do some scales and
But this was, 5 o'clock. And now I can start at, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Well, my wife loves me for that, Which again is why my studio is in the opposite end of the house from her TV room. So, so spending a lot more time doing that. Yeah.
I know that you had mentioned earlier that you're a good friend with the musician from the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. And of course, many of us know of the announcement yesterday that the Met has indeed canceled the remainder of the season this year, and that comes as, quite an announcement for certainly the country, if not the world, because the Met, with a budget of $300 million, is probably one of the largest performing arts organizations in the country, if not the world. So do you still reach out to your friend from the Met Orchestra? And
not recently, maybe when this whole thing started.
Right.
She's retirement age now, and her husband, who's the manager of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, they're retirement age. They, of course, are hit hard by it, but they're retirement age. They can quit any time, I suppose.
Sure.
They feel bad for the people just starting out.
Exactly.
The younger people, and of course the audience, of course.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because of course we're all very concerned about health and safety for musicians and also for audience members. And there certainly are many people who feel that they're not comfortable returning to an auditorium audience setting. And then of course there are other people who are looking forward to getting back. And in fact, the Great Lakes Center for the Arts is open and is holding performances and things like that. So what are you thinking, Vern?
Well, I try not to overthink it.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying my early retirement and just practicing. I can't control, I can only control what goes on in my studio, I think. And so I'm concentrating on that. And it's like I say, it's put a lot of things on the back burner. I have plans, since I've been slowing down the past couple of years. I have friends I've had since high school who I met in band. And we get together a couple times a year and travel. We go to New York, Philadelphia, to hear the orchestras. And that's on hold. And we were just talking last night about how much we look forward to getting together again and going to maybe Boston and Pittsburgh and to go to some concerts. And that camaraderie is, those relationships are kind of put on hold.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And visiting with the people in those orchestras. So.
Well, congratulations on your retirement. I know there will be probably many people out there who will be disappointed that you have retired, but of course we all understand that. And from the perspective of the orchestra, we're very excited to have you continue with the orchestra in your very important role as principal trumpet. And I want to thank you for being a guest on Tuesday Talk.
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I want to thank all of you for joining us again today for Tuesday Talk and for the support you give to the orchestra, not only by tuning in to Tuesday Talks, but also by the gifts that you give to the orchestra. At this time, it is more important than ever, and we know we will continue to be strong through this COVID time, and we look forward to seeing all of you live again as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.